introductions. This is going to be a panel discussion looking at supporting the needs of families in the African American and Latino community. And the tables really are tough for a panel, the way they're set up 2 and 2. We'll live with that. We have 3 people here today to speak with you, starting on the far left. Shirley Perez is with the Arc of Illinois, and you heard her mention that earlier when she was asking questions. She's got a multi-role with that. There is a family support network within the Arc, and Shirley, I think, runs that, actually. She's the director of that program.
Yes.
And there's also a Ligas family advocate network through the Arc, and Shirley is one of those advocates as well. Next is Debra Bass. Debra does a number of things, but probably the key among them is she's the executive director of The Answer, Inc., which is right next door to this area. It's Maywood and...
That's Forest
Well, we're in Forest Park. I thought you were in Maywood, too.
Park. We're in Forest Park. We service the entire Chicagoland area.
She's all over. And that's a nonprofit organization. You've seen Jason with her. She's also a parent of a young man with autism. And on my right is Ovalle, and your program says it's José. It's not. Maddie is his wife, and she also has a couple of different roles. She works in the family clinic at the Institute for Disabilities and Human Development at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and that is a TAP center as well. But she's here today primarily representing Grupo Salto, and Grupo Salto is a support and advocacy and education group in the Chicago area for parents with children with autism, primarily Spanish-speaking, but not required Spanish-speaking. So I'm going to let each of them give a brief opening remark and then probably looking at questions. So you've got the mic, Shirley, go ahead.
Good morning. I apologize, my allergies are acting up. Is that better? Okay, let's start over. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Shirley Perez, and as Russ said, I am a staff member of the Arc of Illinois. I am the executive director of the Family Support Network and the program director for the Ligas Family Advocate Program. Both are programs of the Arc of Illinois. But more importantly, I am a parent of an individual who's 42 years old, whose primary diagnosis is developmental and intellectual disability with a seizure disorder and a secondary diagnosis of autism. And I say that because it's really, really important. When you talk about statistics, a lot of times there are many individuals who are not diagnosed because autism is not their primary diagnosis. And my daughter was a prime example of that. At 42 years old, she was only diagnosed with having autism 22 years ago, okay? So a lot of the issues that she was experiencing was, people were not aware of it, so it created an issue. So the Arc of Illinois, we are an organization that advocates for people with all disabilities, but we're also wise enough to understand that autism is being diagnosed, depending on what statistic you listen to, 1 in 68 person is being diagnosed with it. So in an effort to address that, the Arc of Illinois holds 2 major conferences each year. We just had one in April where we have individuals from across the state and on the national level to discuss what's going on in the autism world. And we have an autism conference coming up later in October. And we have an ARC table here, so all of that information is out on the table so that you can be aware of what's going on. One other thing that I really want to emphasize from the previous presentation was one of the things that the ARC does is we have presentations on how to interact with police. That is really important because as you stated, when your kids are young and cute, it's one story. but when they become 18 and older, and because of how they develop, it can mean the difference between life and death. So I'm happy to be here today to share with you some of the things that we're doing and to learn from each of you how we can all work together. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that there's also 2 other members here that are connected with the ARC. One of our board members, Mary, is sitting on the front row here, and Mary Dixon, she is one of the Ligas family advocates. So thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
Yes.
You know? Again, I'm Debra Bass, CEO and founder of the Answer Incorporated, Autism Awareness and Support Agency, where we are dedicated to providing support, resources, education, recreation, and advocacy, not just for families impacted by autism, but developmental disabilities as well. The reason why I say developmental disorders as well, because we have a lot of children, just like with Shirley, their children are duly diagnosed with ADD, autism, schizophrenia, and autism. Learning disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, autism. So we didn't want to turn anyone away, and wanted to be able to provide that support and advocacy for the family members. I'm also a mom of a handsome 31-year-old Jason. He is actually my youngest child. I have a 45-year-old as well. I don't look at me 30. But you know, autism is my life right now. I eat, sleep, drink, and breathe autism. I love the autism world. Our agency, actually, everything that's been developed through the Answer Incorporated, which was developed in 2007, is a blueprint of not just my needs, but the other parents within the community. We have a Spectrum University program that was derived because a lot of our children, when they aged out of school at 22, was not getting those basic reading, writing, math, letter recognition, name recognition skills. And so we have some amazing tutors that, and some amazing outcomes from our program. We have an exercise and dance program because a lot of our children, when they age out of school, they start gaining weight because they don't have a lot of movement. We also do IEP support. We go to about maybe 5 IEP meetings a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, because we encourage families to take an advocate with them. Because when you go to an IEP meeting, it can be very, 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 very challenging. It's like going to court without an attorney. We do first responders trainings. Again, so many of our children have been arrested because they're autistic. They have beat down by cops because they don't understand the signs and symptoms of a person with autism. We have a Just for Men group my husband created because every meeting he was going to with me, it was nothing but women. So he passed away last year, but we are keeping that group going. And the men, they just get together and not just talk about their children with autism, but they empower each other as fathers of children with disabilities. We do peer dances, so many things that the Answer do. We are a small pebble in a big sea of sand and just trying to get it done. So I welcome all questions and comments.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As Ross said, my name is Ovalle. My husband was supposed to be here today, but we had family emergency. But today I'm going to represent Grupo Salto. Grupo Salto is also for Latino families, mainly. They have a child with any type of disability. Disability not only is for autism, but they come with other type of disorders. And it was born out of the family clinic at the University of Illinois in 2003. And the reason we started that group, I'm also a co-founder, is that the clinic is mostly a diagnostic clinic. And we started with our families diagnosed with children, in this case with autism, and they didn't know where to go. And the language was one of the main problems, the areas. So that started in 2002, 2003, and then it became a not-for-profit organization in 2007. And right now we have over 550 families listed. And the main idea is to do educational sessions once a month. In fact, tomorrow is monthly meetings. And this is done through the collaboration through TAP, the Autism Program, and also the staff, Latino staff from the family clinic. Right now, we try to do more emphasis on adults. That's one of the main areas right now. We have several children that started in 2002, and now they're young adults, and they don't know what to do. One of the main problems that we have, or that I receive calls at the clinic, is from parents that they having problems with their child because the child already reached out 23 years old, 22 years old, they're out of high school, and they don't know where to go. So within Grupo Salto was also born the 2-year program, which is high-functioning young adults, college and graduate bachelors. They are also struggling not only to socialization but also job. Although they've been doing great in schools and at the university, they're still having problems with job researching jobs. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. Trying to do more like a cooperative and do use some of the things that they do out there. Right now we're doing T-shirts, they're doing mugs and things in order to start like an entrepreneur. It's more like entrepreneur business. I'm also a mom. I'm a mom of 29-year-old. They're gonna turn 29 in June 4th. And I found out about autism. At that time, we didn't know where to go because most of us, they didn't know exactly what the problem was. At that time, they mentioned it was something that it was going to go away. Because most of our the psychologists, they didn't know. They were very advanced in vocabulary, but they did not understand. So it was very difficult because a lot of the schools they kept asking, don't put them in they're going to label, don't tell them that they have autism. So it's a struggle, especially when the child looks like it's a neurotypical child, and once they start talking to the child, they see that there's something wrong. So our main goal is to serve. Now we're starting getting more families from other disabilities, not necessarily with autism, also with Down syndrome, and they found out that the support seems like everyone. When we have a child with a disability, the support group is always the next level in terms of helping each other. So that's what we're trying to do right now.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Debra Bass, and I am a part of the Answer Incorporated Autism Awareness and Support Agency with the amazing Ms. Debra Bass over here to my left. And first and foremost, I am a mom. What I do with the Answer is I'm a program coordinator for Spectrum University as well as an IEP specialist. And one of the reasons why I really reached out to Ms. Bass about becoming an IEP specialist is because I have a 9-year-old daughter who is also on the spectrum. And when I first got her diagnosis as autism, I had no idea what it actually meant. I had heard of the title, but I did not have a clinical working definition for myself. So I began to do my research. I began to go through these meetings, and these meetings were extremely hard to navigate by myself. There will be a large panel of 8 to 10 people, and all seeming as if they were against me, and they would tell me, well, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and these are not your rights. And I found out later on, through working with the Answer, that some of the things that they were telling me were untrue. And so when I finally learned how to navigate this program and this process through the help of Ms. Debra Bass, I wanted to just be able to help and advocate for other parents so that they wouldn't have the same hardships that I came across trying to navigate that process for my own child. So now I am an IEP specialist for the Answer as well as a program coordinator to help provide services, also resources for those adults and children. Because the school system has a lot of resources, but once they become adults, the resources are very limited. And so we strive to provide resources, advocacy, as well as parent support groups for those in those communities. Thank you.
We're going to take questions. Before we do that, I just want to mention a couple of things related to some things the speakers have referenced and why it's so important to look at issues in traditionally underserved communities. When we talk about autism, the rate of diagnosis of autism within the United States varies greatly around the country. And although the CDC publishes a number every other year, that's based on a lot of statistical magic, and the actual prevalence of autism according to the states that they look at varies from about 1 in 17 to 1 in almost 100. And there's a question as to why there's that diagnostic difference. We also know that the rate of diagnosis for individuals with autism from traditionally underserved communities, whether it's communities of color or communities where English is not the primary language, is related to socioeconomic issues. It is not related to a genetic difference. All the research on autism says autism occurs at the same rate regardless of nationality, regardless of ethnicity. But when people have difficulty accessing resources to get their diagnosis, the diagnosis doesn't happen. That could be a financial issue. It could be a language issue. Primary method of diagnosing is a combination of observation and extensive interview with the parents. If you don't have a clinician who speaks the same language as the primary language of the parents, your interview will not be accurate. You run into lots of problems in a diagnosis with that, which is part of how Perez came about. I know when I was here in Illinois, the university still has Spanish-speaking psychologists. I'm not sure that's true any longer.
We started with 3 psychologists, but through all the cuts that we had from our governor, we ended up, right now at this point, we only have 1 psychologist.
Only one total?
Yes.
Okay, that's a big
That's-
change.
It's a big change, there's a big change, but fortunately, we still have a Latino psychologist.
Okay. And I can tell you just from personal knowledge, there is a primary Spanish-speaking individual at Rush, Cesar Ochoa, Dr. Ochoa, who can also do diagnostic interviews. So we'll open up to questions. You can address your questions to any one of the panelists or leave the question open, and we'll pass the mic to them. Yes?
My name is Emily Island, and I'm from Los Angeles, originally from Chicago. And I've collaborated with the University of Illinois Chicago and Palo Alto on a project called Parents Taking Action, which is turned out to be, we did a 3-year randomized controlled study to deliver in-home parent training on autism, which took into account all the obstacles Latino families face, like transportation, language, information, cultural beliefs, and things like that. So did you want to talk a little bit about Parents Taking Action and let people know what that's all about, because it can be replicated and adapted for different cultures?
That's something that it was very successful. We, UIC, with this case, Dr. Sandy Magana trained 7 promotoras, what we call promotoras, Parents in Connection, in like an intensive course in everything related to autism. It was this was like a research started in Wisconsin, and she brought that to Chicago. What we found out is that everybody wants to have information in their own language, and promotoras were able to do home visits, 14 home visits, where they would teach the parent everything related to autism. Where are the services, what type of therapists work, what are the resources, where to get those resources. It was like a binding where they had all the resource information. We try to replicate that at the end because that's one of the topics that most of our families bring. When are you doing that parents taking action again? So every month we have at least 3 or 4 new families. Some of them just recently diagnosed the child with autism, and they are still don't know where to go. Although we have with all this information out there and online, they still struggling in getting information. So thanks to TAP, the autism program, we were able to get at least for 7 families. But this time we're trying to incorporate taking care of myself. That's one of the areas that also are very important for us, the parents to maintain their own health in order to take care of the younger ones. So we are hoping that Russ mentioned something about grants. That we're looking to grants to bring the whole parents take connection with us. But that's one of the programs that I think will be very successful in any place they're able to do it.
Could I just add to that parents taking action has been validated as an evidence-based practice and is replicable, and Dr. Sandy Magana will give the material to any group that wants if Muslims want to use our social validity framework to adapt it for the Muslim community or the Black community. So this is now an evidence-based best practice because we had such a robust results with our 3-year randomized controlled study.
And we're trying to expand that into the Asian community too.
So hopefully this could replicate in another language. And I think it's a very, very successful program.
Can you provide information about how people could get in contact?
Yes. Well, how would you think? Should we send Magana straight to her?
Yeah, if you go to the UIC, either through Grupo Salto, we have some information from the Parents Taking Action, but also through the Department of Disability. You'll see there's a resource information for families and in general, and because it's a national website. And you'll see if you say you write Parents Taking Action, you will take it directly to the website.
There's been an extensive publication on it.
We'll also make sure that the Targeting Autism website has contact information for each of the panel members. Marty?
It's not really for a panel member particularly, but I'm Jewish. Is there an autism group for the Jewish community in Illinois? Does anybody know?
Yes, it is. It's, I have that information. I can't think of it off the top of my 61-year-old brain. I do have that information in my office. I do have that information.
Are you thinking of,
Thank you.
are you thinking of linkages? I mean, that's more like disability-wide, but it might include autism.
What did you say?
Linkages?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can give you the information.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Renee?
Yeah, I'm just so grateful for this panel. We're here talking about libraries, and we have a long way to go in making our profession representative of our communities of people of color. And I'm wondering what recommendations any of you have for those of us who are white in this profession to advocate for and bring awareness to some of the things that, Debra, you were talking about when you were answering or sharing your comment. The fear, the stigma, especially with regards to adults with disabilities and autism.
One thing that I've come to realize, and this is not just for me personally, but just dealing with a lot of family members, when you're dealing with families of color, especially in underserved communities, they already have for lack of better words, a lot of baggage. 4 and 5 children, a lot of them are single moms, living in areas where they just don't have any resources, so they just beat down by life. So when they come into a library with their special needs child, they are already just stressed to the 10th power. So when they come into a library, grocery store, department store, and somebody is not welcoming or not educated or just all of those things above, it just puts up, I guess you would call a wall of defensiveness. So my advice is to be the nice person that you already but just kind of be a little extra nice. Because, these parents, they just beat down. They beat down by just everything of not being able to get the things that they need in the community and from family members. I am blessed to be in a community where people know Jason, they love him, he's the Facebook celebrity. And everywhere we go, people just love him. I mean, I'm in the airport and this lady running down the hall, Jason! I'm so serious, so a lot of it is, that's why I try to encourage parents to take your kids wherever you go. Russ mentioned earlier in his earlier statement that a lot of the stigma just is that our family members and communities of color, we just don't bring our children out. It's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of blame. It's a lot of socioeconomic things that goes along with serving families of color. But my main, I guess, advice is just to be extra super nice, extra super giving, accountable, and all of those things. Then that wall will come down. Because our parents and families of color, children of color, they have a lot of walls up. A lot of walls up just from different challenges in life. And this is what I've experienced.
I'd like to add to that. I think it's also important that you become educated. As individuals, it doesn't matter where you come from. We all have different cultures. But one of the things that I know as a parent and as the executive director of the Family Support Network, one of the things that I find is prejudgment. A lot of times, unfortunately, when individuals see an African American, if he's 6 feet, 200 pounds, and he doesn't have the physical appearance of having a disability, but there are some behavior issues, we tend to tense up. And so what we have to do is be real about it. It's fine to say, you want to be welcoming, but you have to communicate that not just to you, but also to your coworkers and to your family. It starts at home. And one of the things that I like to tell people, disabilities does not discriminate. And I think that if we all take the time to learn, one of the things that I hear a lot about coming from a cultural perspective in the African American community, a lot of the caregivers for these individuals are older, okay? They come from a culture where you did not talk about this type of thing. And to expect them to be able to just suddenly open up, that's a problem. So I think it's going to be a two-way street, as Debra said. The kindness is great, but education, information, and resources. And one of the things that the Arc of Illinois does with the Family Support Network, I'm so grateful. We have partnered with organizations like the Answer Inc., Chicagoland Autism. We go out and do presentations at libraries, okay, so that you get an opportunity to know. How many people here are familiar with the Arc of Illinois? Okay, that's good, better than one, but not enough, because you need to be able to know where to get information. And I'll talk about this a little later, because it's not only being aware of autism, it's how do we combine acceptance with being aware, because you cannot accept something you don't understand. And one of the other things that happens when our kids are cute and cuddly, it's one thing, but there's such a lack of education about Medicaid. What happens when the bus stops coming? What happens when the parent is older? So it goes back to that education, getting connected, getting the resources, and not being afraid to say, hey, Ms. Perez, could I sit down and talk to you, at the Arc of Illinois? Could one of your colleagues come out and talk to us about the issues? Because you cannot meet the needs of others if your needs and the tools that you need to work with them is not provided to you.
Okay, José had his hand up first. Go ahead, José.
Oh, yes, okay, I don't even know my. Can you hear me? I was just pointing out that in terms of being cute and cuddly, actually, when I was 13 years old, 2 years before I was diagnosed autistic, I was actually accused of shoplifting. And, well, I was embarrassed, so it broke out in this sort of Chester-like grin. And for the shopkeeper, that was my confession. I'll just point out that,
Wow.
But when you talk about underserved communities, what about like underdiagnosed? Because like I think, for instance, there are a lot of cases in which, if I think about my own history, where a lot of problems I had were read in terms of, like, so for instance, me being raised by a single parent, or me being, let's say, just being angry about my status in society, and that my diagnosis was missed because I was read as a person of color.
And I think generally that also becomes an issue. The average age of diagnosis in the United States was going down for quite a while. It got to about age 4. And although experienced diagnosticians can actually diagnose likelihood of autism at 18 months, the average age has not dropped further. So the average age of diagnosis in the United States still remains about age 4 across the country. And even more important than that, or maybe worse than that, is there are many, many people who don't get a diagnosis even though it's somewhat obvious, partially because there are both practitioners and families who don't want to put the label autism on children at any time, and also because people experienced in diagnosing autism with less than really obvious signs and symptoms tend to abound in the field. So I know a lot of the older people I've worked with who have autism started out with what I call a shopping list of diagnoses. We think it's this, then it's that, then it's something else. And in the mental health world, once you have a diagnosis from somebody, it never disappears, because no mental health professional is willing to say that person was wrong at that time. So that label will follow. Your diagnosis is by history, A, B, C, D, E, and then whatever the latest provider has diagnosed you with. So that causes a problem, and there are many people who don't look like they have autism or any disability.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what Russ just said, because in my research and studies of talking to families in underserved communities, children are diagnosed, a lot of them, until they're 7 and 8 years old. And some of it is because the waiting list of being diagnosed or being screened is a long waiting list. And again, families have other children, they have husbands, they have other things to do, and they just go along with life until that child's behavior just gets so irate that they have to get something done. There's so many family members that we service that, oh, I just got diagnosed, he's 8. Oh, I need to go get a screening. I just keep forgetting. Oh, I'll get to it. And a lot of it is because it's just not enough screening areas. A lot of them are on Medicaid. They don't have private insurance. And if they have Medicaid, they have to get on this long waiting list. I mean, I have some families, I've taught them how to get a little creative so they can get ahead of the list. Because sometimes you have to be creative when you are on Medicaid to get ahead of the list. If you don't have private insurance, that's another disparity in communities of color, is the Medicaid issue. And I know Shirley can concur with that, because the ARC does amazing work as it relates to getting that information out on their websites as it relates to Medicaid. So Medicaid is another disparity of the families isolating their children and not getting screened.
And in terms of Latino families, we still, although we have all this information out there, even in Spanish, sometimes the clinic, some of our psychologists are diagnosing a 17-year-old, and I know, and it's more cultural. One of them, and as Russ said, some of these young adults, they don't look like they have they don't have this characteristics of autism, so it's getting more difficult to diagnose. Besides, in terms of our culture, we tend to say, well, you know, your younger sister started walking or talking until he was 7 or 8 years old. So it's also part of the culture that some of our Latino families are diagnosed very late.
I want to comment on an idea of libraries, if I can. The traditional library in the past, as you go, you check out a book, you read it, you have a card catalog. And now, with more electronics and people having access to literature, perhaps the libraries have dwindled in terms of people actually visiting libraries. So instead of people coming to libraries, what can libraries do to come to the community? The idea of technology, of having, for example, a reading hour that is on Facebook or that is on a Lifetime, that somebody actually be reading a book to children, that this is your reading hours. I think those kinds of ideas of reaching out and saying at 8 o'clock on Monday nights, Adria and the dog read a story. And so, and children can get, you know, that they're always on their little devices. That's tune-in time, and that gives mother a break of that story time. So the idea of reaching out is something that I've had on my mind, along with reaching out in a support group. People are not going to stop what they're doing to come to you anymore. We just don't operate that way in our society. We got to go to them. And if you had a support group for certain concepts of what is the IEP, kindergarten crisis, I don't even know what IEP stands for, a mother may say. The whole concept of what is special ed, what are special ed laws, how can we direct it? Another crisis time, absolutely age 10 to 12, when the kid starts overpowering the parent. You get a 150-pound, robust kid who has aggression, and the mother is trying to make this kid better, the mother is melting down. What will I do? How will I handle him? And I've seen it. And another crisis time is transition to adulthood. So if you had support groups of early childhood, early adolescence, and late adolescence, where you directed them and brought that and sent that out to the community with speakers to come in, talk, or whatever, I think that would be a great
With all due respect, Doctor, we do that. We do.
Okay.
Everybody at this table,
Okay.
we do that. We have, and if I may speak for everybody at this table, the Answer, the ARC, the Basalto, CAC, we all have support groups with all those different topics. We have support groups every single month. Adolescents, what do you do when you get diagnosed? We have therapists come in. We have so many different resources, and we make ourselves available. But what happens is the parents get lazy, and I'm just getting ready to call it like it is. They get lazy, they get complacent. You know, everybody is not an autism supermom. Everybody is just not. They get to the point where they want you to do all of their work for them. And I'm just being real. They want you to do all of their work for them, and we don't just service one family. But when we start giving them the information, they want us to hold their hand, and we hold their hand to a certain degree, but guess what? We need to give that energy to another parent. So the information is here. When Jason was diagnosed, and he's 31 years old now, when he was diagnosed, he was 1 in 1,000. Now is 1 in, what, 54, 48, 58?
It keeps changing.
It keeps changing, but my point is, the resources were minute when Jason was diagnosed. I had to ride a train 2 hours to almost an hour and a half to just the support service. I waited and waited. We walked through the snow, my husband and I with Jason, but everybody's just not gonna do that. So great information that you just gave, but we're doing that already. So what's the next step? What do we do next?
And get the information out, because I'm not sure, like on my office, and I do a lot of work in autism. I do early diagnosis, you know, we're a regional area in southern Indiana for early diagnosis and information. We don't have access to the local library.
Okay.
We don't know that they're doing
If
that.
I may, in terms for example, group as I mentioned, we do monthly sessions, and we try to work as a family as a whole. So the parents are in the educational stations. We take care of our children in all ages. And we have one specifically for the transition that is called Jump to the Arts. And it was done specifically for children that have autism. The idea is we have a child care, we have for the siblings, we have for the young adults, that's where the Twinio came out of them. And we also have specifically the art program. With the idea to work more like a transition program so that families can bring it to a regular park. It shows different art visual, try to train the kids, do some types of structure. Okay, this is music, this is art, this is arts and crafts. So we've been trying to do all the services that families, as a parent, that I wanted to have, and with the idea, because there's no programs out there. And that's one of the things that the parents keep asking. Well, I went to the park, I don't have anybody, because they don't want to deal with my son, because they don't follow instructions. That's the first thing that they do. So that's how we started the Little Cycle, trying to cover the whole family. In terms of the libraries, I think at the clinic, we have some of the students coming to read the children, and also including the parents. So to give them an idea that, okay, we also give them books. Take this to your home. And we've seen the results. The parents, as Debra says, it depends on the parents. We have parents that are very active, and the ones that are out of the children that started in 2003, that now they are college graduate or bachelor's degree, it's because the parents were helping them. But we also have parents that are denial. They don't want to hear that the child has autism because of the label of different reasons. And what we found out at the clinic, these parents that are in denial, 7 years later, they wanted to help. But it's kind of late because they already left 7 years, and the children are more difficult to really retrain. So we still have a lot of things to work with, but I guess one of the things that we're trying to do right now with the 2 years, those teenagers, those young adults that they're high functioning and they are trying to do mentoring the little ones, what we're trying to do with them is for them to give us ideas, how can we help the community? And they're being given a lot of very good ideas, and that's one of the reasons that we also started the mentoring program. Talking about library, the 2-year-old did a presentation. Us invite them to do a presentation in Springfield, and I think they have, I was telling her that we just found out the presentation in case someone wants to know what a library needs to have for the families to be more comfortable. So it's any ideas that you think we might be able to bring to the families in order to have a successful and try to improve the child in the community are more than welcome. So that's it.
So speaking again towards the denial, I personally, as a representation for the answer, have gone into schools in our community. I spoke with diverse learner coordinators, and I've disseminated all of our information into these meetings. We go into the schools. We go into the different communities. We are at almost, we set up our table, we set up our information at everything that we could possibly set up at. And so, as far as the community, a lot of them are, how they say, are in the hood. I've come across a lot of parents who, as the gentleman spoke before, because they don't seem severe or not severely profound, they will not accept an autism diagnosis. And as the young lady at the library spoke, it's education. What can you do to help? Autism is a part of everything. It's a part of every conversation because you will have some in every genre, every community. And so just to bring it into different meetings that you all are having, you know, how is the autism community or the diverse learner or disability, bring it into a workplace, bring it into the library. That should be a part of a lot of different conversations, not just about having something specific geared towards autism, but to also bring autism and other intellectual disabilities into the conversations of other things, because it all applies.
I just want to add, what Dr. Nassing started out with was talking about using technology. And I think it's important to realize when you're in Chicago or in most cities, you lose sight of the fact that we have lots of people in this country, and that includes in Illinois, who live in very rural areas. There are counties, certainly in Colorado, I can speak from firsthand experience, that don't even have a primary care physician anywhere in the county. Never mind a specialist or somebody who understands autism. So there is a need to be able to breach distance and time and provide education. And that's the advantage of technology. When people learn how to use it, not everybody will use it. Some people just simply won't. But for those who will, it expands your reach in a relatively inexpensive way, in a way that allows families who, for whatever reason, can't come personally to what's available to take advantage and to benefit from what you have. So, over here.
Kind of to piggyback off that, I would wonder if you ladies could speak to the digital divide at all in families, and because I build our library's website. So I'm kind of taking mental notes on all the links and things that we can start sharing, building pages on our website. But like everybody generally has a smartphone now, but does everybody and are websites mobile friendly? Are we making sure that they're mobile friendly? Like, have you had experiences with how people are accessing technology and getting information, and do we have information preferences for, should we have more books or?
I can speak to that on behalf of the Arc of Illinois. I can tell you that's a big issue. And a lot of people, the Arc of Illinois is statewide, and we have a presence in Downstate Illinois. And you assume everybody has a smartphone or access to the internet. That is not the case. And even those who have access to it, they're not stable providers in those areas. So one of the things that the Arc of Illinois does, we have an Illinois Assisted Technology Program where we provide iPads to individuals. And what we try and do, we use every method of communication, including snail mail. We do letters, we'll do phone calls, we'll do conferences, we'll do after hours. We will go into whatever settings, whatever we can do to reach families. But that is still a big issue. And you may not believe it, but there's still a lot of families, when you think everyone has a smartphone, that's the case. There are individuals who are truly dealing with life and death situations when it comes to Medicaid in terms of getting their medicine, when it comes to survival, when it comes to older parents who are trying to figure out how to do what. And so one of the things that the ARC continuously try to do is we will do small meetings in small areas. We reach out. Our board is diverse. It's diverse not only in geographical location, and in the people that we serve, but also in the individual's experiences. So that our Ligas Family Advocate Program, that program is designed to reach older adults, people who are 18 or older. That's important because people are not going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 forever. And so what we're concerned about at the Arc of Illinois is reaching out, informing our legislators that we need money. Yes, we have to talk about money. It's fine to, have compassion and all of that, but we need funding. We need our families to be educated. We need them to vote. We need them to be aware of situations. So if that means that my staff and I have to schedule a phone call at 7 o'clock in the evening, because that's the time that the family has someone who can watch their loved one, or that person is taking a nap, that's what we do. But we're open to suggestions. So that's an excellent idea. How can we connect? So I would like personally for the Arc of Illinois for us to get a list of all of the libraries, to find out what are you doing, what are you willing to do, so that we can share that information.
There's actually a website, and I apologize for not remembering it offhand, but you can look every public library website in the U.S. I'm going to give you my card, and I will help you find that.
Fantastic.
And I can get you a list of, there are 642 public libraries in Illinois, and I can get you all that contact information. And I wanted to say something, if I could, even though you didn't call on me. It's a question. First of all, I think most of the librarians in the room have realized that there are national initiatives that have started years ago, actually, that we're making a real attempt, the American Library Association, to get all libraries to look outward and to connect with community organizations. And that's, you know, how libraries are evolving. It's very different than when we were growing up, you know, and libraries have become community support centers. I think I had mentioned yesterday in my opening remarks that ALA published something in April, Library Trends, that really talks about that, you know, and it's often the places where there is no connectivity at home, you know, that they go to libraries to get online. And part of the thing, it's kind of a two-way thing though. I mean, we would like to, when we started this Targeting Autism, one of the things that came out was, why is it when you go to a pediatrician, you know, I have a son on the spectrum, and when I went to his pediatrician, you know, it's kind of like they tell you what they think's going on, and then you leave, and, you know, they're not giving books and information out. But it would be wonderful if the doctors said, hey, go to your public library, they've got, you know, resources on this, and, you know, so it's kind of making those connections. It's slow, things are slow to evolve, but a lot is happening, and I know that, I don't want to isolate, I'm sure many of you are doing great things, but certainly the one I'm aware of most in Illinois is the Skokie Public Library.
Oh, yes.
They just, you know, have done such amazing things with community engagement, and more of that is happening and will continue to grow, and I just, you need to know that we need to do more.
Just real quickly, I wanted to speak on the library piece. The answer was, we created a resource room in the Broadview Library, actually the first resource room in the Proviso Township for autism. And one thing that we're doing is encouraging libraries, especially in communities of color, to have these autism resource rooms so that they know that they can go someplace and get resources. We keep the resource area updated with different things that are going on in the community, because everybody's not going to a website. We, again, piggybacking on Shirley, we service a lot of older families, a lot of old school families that still have flip phones. Everybody doesn't have a smartphone, really. I mean, I'm still really taken back by people that still have flip phones, but they do. And so they're not resource accessible. So we are just grateful to Targeting Autism and the Autism Program of Illinois for us to be able to provide this funding for to open up resource rooms in the libraries for the families to get information. So we're just encouraging you as librarians and friends of librarians and supporters to encourage the families to go to the library to get information on autism, because the libraries are autism friendly.
So I just wanted to kind of follow up to a question that I think, is it Renee, you asked earlier? So I work at the University of Kentucky, and one of the things that attracted me to the UK is that it's an incredibly diverse population. However, the library system is not incredibly diverse. And when we think about, like, how do we make libraries more inclusive of different, you know, populations and make them feel comfortable, we think about how can we reflect that in the profession and in the staff. And what are we not doing that we need to do to invite them to into the profession? And so I'm just wondering, what are some strategies for maybe university libraries, but also just libraries in general, that we can really promote the idea of this as being a profession and an option for them? Because I think that speaks louder than words if they can be reflected in the staff.
Okay, I don't mean to hog the mic, but the answer does encourage and train, and we do follow-ups on how to make your library more autism friendly. We'll walk you step by step with how to create a quiet room, how to design your library where, you know, because when I go in places, I look at it from a parent. eye of a parent, and an eye of a professional, and I try to see through the eyes of my child as well. So I'm coming from 3 different areas at the same time. So when you're looking for that, you can call Answer Incorporated at 708-296.
And I also want to say to you, I think it's really important when you want to reach out. It's important to involve the individuals that you're going to be serving, the families of the individuals, because no one can advocate better for themselves than them. So if you're really looking for people, I don't know if you have maybe like a training program or where you can have people come in and maybe meet some of the families, because I think sometimes when people go into different professionals or whatever, if they can get an overview of what it entails, you will tend to have a person who will stay around longer than someone that's just saying, this is a job. I cannot remember who it was, but I was at a presentation and he talked about how do we advertise for people who want to get into the business of working with people with different abilities. And he says, you don't say, hey, do you want to work with someone who's going to beat you up or scratch you or, you probably should have done something. No, do you want to be a part of an organization that provides quality, that enhances the quality of life for individuals? Do you want to be the difference, in an individual's life? And I think when you do that, you give people an opportunity to meet the people. Because I'm more apt, if I come to your organization, if I see somebody who looks like me, I'm more apt to believe that you're committed than if you're just saying it in words. And I think that that's a big difference, giving people an opportunity to experience it from the people that they will be working with. And, orientation into, what they will have to deal with. Because the fact of the matter is, we have to be honest here. Every day is not a day of roses. There are some difficult times. There are some difficult situations. There are situations where individuals, when they're in the different phases of their lives, where, you have to be concerned. As a parent, yes, you know your child. But if your child has autism, is on medication, there can be side effects and all of that. So you need to see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And just something for everyone to keep in mind, although we're focusing on autism libraries, individuals with autism and families with individuals with autism are just a subset of society. So those families and those individuals are dealing with all of the same issues that other people are dealing with without autism, plus the issues specific to having autism. So, how do we get more people of diverse backgrounds into almost any profession? Part of that comes from the early educational system. A lot of people in underserved populations will end up being the first person in their family to go to college. How is that supported? What does your library look like generally? We could look around this room, and this is not unique. We could look around this room, and the pins of the room is noticeable. It doesn't reflect the population, certainly in the Chicagoland area, and in many other places. And I'm in a community where I'm currently in Bloomington, Indiana. That community professional group does not represent the community as a whole. So that's very common, and it is a challenge to get past that.
And I was just going to say real quick that the University of Kentucky does something that if you all don't do in your library, maybe you should consider, is we do have a diversity scholar program. And so that's been really great to get undergraduates, give them a taste of what it's like in the library profession, to see if that's something they may want to enroll in a master's program one day down the road. But there's a lot of things like that, and then there's scholarships with different state organizations and ALA. And so I think we just need to do a better job of promoting those, because I think oftentimes it's just not communicated.
Yes, I agree.
I just wanted to add something to this conversation, if I could.
And I agree with you, it needs to start young, because if you have a child who feels comfortable coming to the library, they like libraries, it's diversity and literature for them, they see people just like them, they're gonna be more inclined, but what we can do as libraries is begin early on to offer volunteer opportunities to teens who are on the spectrum, and that will give them that actual experience, it will give them soft skills for work, will give them a place to be out in the community. It helps in many, many ways, and that can be a bridge towards considering library as a profession. So,
Okay, let me go over here and then I'll get back.
Thank you. So as an ALA counselor, I'm just going to throw this out there. ALA really is working on initiatives to create a more diverse. I think there's a lot of things that we could do. Is number one, lower the barrier of entry into the profession and make it a bachelor's to be a librarian. I mean, really, do we need to? And then maybe master's as a manager or whatever, right? I don't know. But PLA is doing a fantastic thing. This is the third year they're offering an inclusive internship initiative, which public libraries have applied for. And what it allows is for a high school student to be paid to come and do a project in your library. So it's a great thing, right? So they come in for a summer, and it's based around connected learning, but then they're able to actually get a feel. Maybe this is what a lot of people don't realize you can work in a library, right? And it's a great job. So opening up that dialogue with people in the community, and I think changing our hiring practices are big things that we can do to actually make it quick implementation. So that's what I want to say. Thank you for listening.
Been waiting, so.
Yeah, as a librarian and someone on the spectrum and mom of someone on the spectrum who was diagnosed late, and I think bridging the digital divide, I think marketing is the key. I think putting signs out in front of your library. So I'm at the U of I, and I was just talking this morning, just because we know how much libraries are worth, doesn't mean anyone outside the building, especially of this generation who just says libraries a quiet place, libraries books, libraries are relevant, they're never gonna get past that. I'm just thinking, so billboards, just like McDonald's, like people don't go flock to where the young people don't flock there because there's a place that just says store on it, They're bombarded with images like, oh, I should check this out, I should check this, and it's like, even though the U of I library has a Twitter page, it's like not like anyone's gonna go look for it to follow it. So it's like, so in going out, I think, put a banner in front of your library that says, we serve autistic communities one week, next week changes, we serve Muslim communities, because that's how you bridge the digital divide. Everyone walks by, everyone drives by, just to go back to the basics of, and then I'm thinking too, with how electronic everything is, you don't really need to be sitting behind desks. So like my oboe teacher in high school said, there's nothing to be feared that's to be understood. And if you would, instead of having the reference librarian sit behind a desk near the door, I'm thinking the universal design and access thing was really good. So instead of having to have an autistic person approach the desk, which is an authority figure, which is a barrier, like, oh, what am I going to say? What if they laugh at me? Just go to the, greet everyone at the door. Hi, welcome to our library. What can I help you find today? Or what can I do for you? It would be that simple. And since you're not that busy at your desk anyway, just get out. Just walk forward 10 feet, and take shifts, reaching out, because I think that's the barrier right there. It's just like when they say, you hit that handicap button, everyone assumed that, okay, so maybe everyone who's already in the library has hit the handicap button to get in there, but even then, there's a lot they don't know. At the U of I library, the main library building, I hate it. I worked in ILL, people would come in like, where are the books, There's no sign saying, this is where all the computers are, this is where the bathrooms are. It's like, do we have to make it that hard? Like, to have to fess up, I need to pee, and who do I tell in this vaunted institution that I need to do that, So just dropping, just think, no barriers at all, just be totally, and this generation growing up now doesn't know, they don't know that parents know stuff, okay? They don't even know how to use the post office, so all these things, it's like, they don't know, and with the Muslim, I love the inclusion thing, because there is the discrimination, and I've lived overseas,
but they don't know that Christianity has anything to offer either, you know? So it's just like things that we didn't have to market in past generations now need to be explained in a relevant way, and starting with just open your mouth, put a sign out in front, and just start explaining yourself to the generation. I think putting up a billboard, you know, just, again, people, as much as they're on their phones, they have to see stuff still in the physical world, you know? And so just get in the physical world, and I think that would need to be done.
I grew up where I work now, and I have anxiety. And so I was scared of libraries growing up. So now with our culture shift in our own library where we are greeting people, like we've seen the floodgates open with so many more people visiting the actual building. So that works.
Yeah. I just wanted to say something about hiring policies and diversity. When I was in library school 20 years ago, I was a Spectrum Initiative Scholar. In fact, we actually had a leadership institute at Hamburg University, which I think is no plus. But anyway, it was that got me into the profession. It got me to meet other people who were in the library profession who were people of color. But one problem was that even entry-level professional positions always required experience. And I finally wound up getting a job, at a part-time job at Newbury College because the library director didn't believe in that. He said he was going to hire me even though he didn't have experience. So so it's kind of like a barrier. It's like you need experience, but how do you get experience if you don't have the experience?
Yeah, and a lot of times people can't afford to volunteer because they need paying jobs. I mean, that's like when you say, oh, volunteer to get experience, you're coming already from an affluent community. Yeah, sorry to say. I mean, when you're younger and starting out and everything, you know, hopefully when you get older, obviously there's a lot of people volunteering and working at the same time.
I think my question, which is going to kind of turn into a little bit of a commentary a little bit, it kind of highlights what's been talked about here. One is that, you know, everybody's saying there's a need for this in our system. We need this. We need education. We need our employees. We need our staff to be educated on this. We need to be working with PR to make this more friendly. But at the same time, and I'm just saying this just from experience as an administrator in education, Rome was not built in a day. And the one thing that I've seen over the past in developing initiatives is that if you don't get the flood of people knocking at the door, when you have that autism sign that says, we welcome the autism community, and if you don't have a line out the door, kind of like, you know, knock, 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 here we are, then it starts to fade. And the thing that the one thing that I can say, and that I like Diana and Debra to kind of hit on, is you have to start small.
Yes.
You have to start small, and you have to persevere. So I'd like to ask two of you ladies with the answer on the beginnings of it and how it's grown to where it is today. Because I'm in Proviso Township where Debra is, so I've seen it firsthand. I've been in the district for 19 years. I've seen it firsthand grow. And right now, I mean, it's you turn the corner and there's an activity. You're hearing about the groups. You're having the conversations about it. You see the tables at every possible function. You're seeing the answer tables. You're seeing Jason everywhere, like I said. But if you could kind of start that.
Well, one thing that I really stressed when we started the answer in 2007, because I didn't know anyone that had a child with autism, and so first of all I wanted to get some friends of my own, and once I started just the support group and touching the families and just hearing their concerns, I started this big marketing piece, and our slogan is "Open Your Heart to Autism." And so we have these signs that we put everywhere, gas stations, restaurants, schools, everywhere. And so when people see the Open Your Heart to Autism slogan and they see our logo, they give us a call, just like the ARC has the logo, and McDonald's has the big arches. And again, it starts with marketing. And not just with marketing with signs, but marketing with your mouthpiece, like you said. You have to speak up and talk about autism. What Dana said, I'm going to speak to that as well. Autism has to be a daily conversation. I know some people around me probably get tired of me talking about autism. One time my friend told me, Debra, we're not talking about autism today, but I it's what I do. And so now everybody knows that a part of my conversation is going to be autism, so they just start talking about it first. And I'm so serious, and it's just not with my friends, it's with the legislators. When they see me coming to Springfield, now they part like the Red Sea because they know I'm getting ready to ask for some money. I'm getting ready to talk about supportive services. I'm getting ready to do something. So all of us have to be adamant about this conversation. It can't be just something, oh, by the way, because that really irks me when I look up and it's someplace that I could have been. Oh, Debra, we forgot to invite you. Oh, by the way, autism should have been at the table. Oh, by the way. Oh, you know, that can't happen anymore. We have to be unapologetically autism advocates. We have to be unapologetically autism librarians. We have to be unapologetically autism parents. Just unapologetically about autism, period. It is up to all of us.
I need to add to that. It's wonderful what you started in with the Answer Inc., with Chicago Land Autism. But one of the things that the ARC was committed to, and I reached out to you earlier this year, we have over 20,000 people on the waiting list for services, okay? So we need to make sure that what is working in one area, we try to figure out how we can duplicate it. And one of the things that the ARC is doing is we made a commitment with the Family Support Network. We are at every event that the Answer Inc. have that we can attend. We're at every event that Chicago Land Autism has. We're at every other event. The ARC is a statewide organization, and I think that what we have to understand is if it's working well someplace else, we need to figure out how to duplicate it. Because individuals, as I said earlier, disability does not discriminate. So yes, you have to start small, but you have to get information about where to start and how to move forward and how to continue it. Because here's the thing, one of the things that the ARC is really adamant about is making sure that information is shared statewide and not dependent on one person. Because if I'm not here today or tomorrow, I am involving people in my life, in my business and professional life, so this fight goes on. You know, I'm not going to be here forever. But autism, as someone said earlier, does not end. So we've got to find a way to pull all of the silos together. And that's what the ARC is trying to do. Learning everything I can from the Answer Inc., learning everything else I can from Chicago Land Autism and any other organization so that we can move forward and share what we need to know. That young lady.
Excuse me.
Can I just hit up real quick on what Shirley said? I've been with the ARC for 1 year, and this is a plug to Illinois libraries, because I want to thank you all. As a Ligas family advocate, I reach out to the families just starting to get intellectual developmental disability services who've been on that wait list that Shirley talked about. And I just made a quick list. So we have had Know Your Options events for local families in Joliet Public Library, Elmhurst Public Library, Aurora Public Library, Skokie Public Library, Riverside Public Library, and on June 13th it will be in the Schaumburg Public Library. And I only cover 3 ISCs right now. Those are called Independent Service Coordination Agencies in Northern Illinois. My colleague Megan in Central and Southern Illinois is reaching out and hosting events, in that part of the state. But I love libraries. You've been so welcoming. These locations are fabulous. I just want to give a big thank you from me personally, because I've been able to go out instead of just being in the southwest suburbs where we are, to meet people. Each ISC covered a huge swath of territory, so being able to do Aurora and Elmhurst for one ISC, Schaumburg and Skokie, Homewood and, I'm trying to think of getting some of my ISCs confused, but to try to have families come where geographically it's closer to them and have a room where you can use the technology, bring in sandwiches, you know what I mean? It's really been the outreach vehicle that I love, which is your local library. You guys are fabulous, so thank you.
Speaking to the local libraries and how she asked how can the libraries get this marketing piece. One of the things that I would like to encourage the librarians to do is to come out into the community. There are so many opportunities to be vendors at community events. So one of the things that we had our annual walkathon, and we invited the libraries to come out because unfortunately there's still a stereotype that the library is boring, and we won't know what's in the library unless you come out and let us know. Have a vibrant table to say, hey, we service the autism community, we service diverse learning. We also have volunteers for, you can come find a job at the library. Even in schools, let the schools know, let the university know. Come out of the library. Not saying that you don't, because I don't know firsthand. We do partner with a lot of librarians that do come to our events. But to get more involved in the community events, to send a representative to say, hey, we have all of this going on in the library, because a lot of people are just not going into the library. You can have everything in the world. You can have a smorgasbord of activities, but if no one knows you're there, you would need to come out into the community to be able to say, hey, this is what we have going on, and you could benefit. And even to ask the students or the schools, the targeted population that you're looking for, what do you need in the library? How should the library look? And as I'm sure some of you have already done, but just to get out more into the community is what I would advise you.
Okay. We're going to end this, so I'm almost afraid to do this, but I'll give each of the panelists 30 seconds to make any closing comments you have, and then we'll be taking a break.
Okay, I would just like to say, those of you who are not familiar with the Arc of Illinois, you need to become familiar with the Arc of Illinois, because we have programs that span the lifespan of an individual. You need to have information, and you need to be connected. The Arc of Illinois is a statewide organization, and we don't want you to just be stuck in the phase that you're in. We want you to plan for the end goal when you're not here. We want you to learn about all of the things that you need to know along the lifespan of your individual. And we are a one-stop shop. We connect with other organizations, and we are here, most importantly, to serve and to learn from you. So the Arc of Illinois, www.thearcofill.org. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, the Answer Incorporated welcomes you all because we service the families from diagnosis until you don't need us anymore. We have an array of services that we just want to help you with, especially with the librarians when you'll come in. And as I spoke to earlier, do trainings for you guys. We're in the schools, we do IEP supports, we train the police officers. We are just absolutely everywhere, not just with doing family support. So we have a table out there, and I also want to say that we've expanded our services to the Loretto Hospital in Chicago. We're going to be partnering with this young lady right here. She started a supportive services. She wanted to do something in Berwyn, so she reached out to the Answer, so we're going to partner with her as well. Our goal is to be on the south side of Chicago by the fall. We're going to be doing a lot of things with Chicago Public Schools as well. So we are here. Our table is out there with our information, and thank you so much.
If anybody wants to know a little more information about Grupo Salto, you can go to gruposalto.org. Most of this information that is on the website, it's kept by the young adults that are high functioning. That we're trying to train in different areas. And also, I would like to add that now that I see all these librarians here, we wanted to invite them for the next annual second conference for Grupo Salto that is going to be. We started doing this in April 6th, and we hope that we're going to do this like on an annual basis. So you can keep in mind every April we're going to not only one topic. We're going to talk about different areas. This conference that we did was very successful, and it's because the parents kept asking once a month is not enough. So what we tried to do this time, we brought 10 presenters, 2 keynote speakers, and mainly we want to bring the high functioners, which are the mentoring for the younger ones, to talk about their own experiences, which I'm going to download the presentation that they did in case anybody wants more suggestions and ideas on how to work with your libraries. They are the ones that gave information on how a library should be for a child or person that have autism. And thank you so much for your attendance.
I would like to thank all of the librarians who are here and who have made that effort to make your spaces autism friendly. And I know that sometimes you all do not have, I spoke with a few librarians who say our budget is very small. But I would like to encourage you all, if you all want to make your spaces more autism friendly, to reach out to the answer, because there are certain things that you may have already that are able to be used in these autism spaces that you just may not see because you don't have the eyes of an autistic individual or the child or the parent that the answer could possibly help you with. So even if you know that your budget is kind of small, I would suggest that you all still, if you're needing that help, to reach out to the Answer Incorporated to see how, even within your budget, or you have budget coming up later, that you can make those spaces a little bit more friendly. Even if someone who is on the spectrum has come in, it's still, even from a child's point of view, even as myself, I have a young child, and some of you may have young children, but just to get that different perspective, because sometimes we see from the eyes of my child only, opposed to having either the adult perspective or some other perspective. So I just want to thank you all for what you do and what you're doing in your libraries.
Two organizations that aren't here today that you probably should like to be aware of. The first is TAP, the Autism Program of Illinois. I don't have any connection with them any longer, but I did. They have a variety of free resources available on their websites, and they will provide training and speakers. And the other, I know, has mixed reactions in the autism community, but Autism Speaks has a huge collection of free resources available. And for those who haven't kept up with it, the leadership of Autism Speaks changed a few years ago, and with that, so did their mission and the direction they're going in. They are not still talking about autism as a scourge and a death sentence or anything else. They are recognizing and working within the neurodiversity space now, and that really has changed. Their new science officer is focusing on best practices for ongoing treatments and helping people experience a high quality of life, as opposed to looking for a cure. So there has been that change. At least give them a look. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll start again at 11.